If you create an incentive for something, you will get more of that thing. And that's true always. It's baked into human nature. If we see a chance to be better off than we already are, we're going to take it. Which means that if you create an incentive for people to identify as non-binary, well, you'd better believe they're going to take it. Even police officers have now been caught out faking a non-binary gender so as to rort their salary allowances. More on that later in the video. But what's hit the news more recently is what the team at 2GB discovered when a caller tipped them off, claiming that they had ticked the non-binary box on an insurance application just out of curiosity. And that caller claims they had an $800 saving in their insurance premium. A 2GB staff member then tested the theory, and whilst the saving that they found in their case was far smaller, it was still very real and significant. I'm going to read from the news.com.au article about it. And we read that Ben Fordham said, "The best deal goes to the non-binary driver. Just tick the non-binary box because no one is going to be able to disprove how you are identified. You are going to get a better deal," end quote. But the article goes on. We put it to the test. This is news.com.au speaking now. Getting 3 quotes from NRMA Insurance for a middle-aged Sydney driver behind the wheel of an electric Kia EV3, and found the price varied significantly. Changing only the driver's stated gender, we found the male driver was quoted at $2,236 per year, the female driver $2,061 per year, and the non-binary driver $1,955. An NRMA insurance spokesperson said it recently introduced a non-binary option into the comprehensive car insurance quoting process to enable non-binary customers to be represented and recognised when applying for insurance. There are so many problems here, not least of which is the inherent discrimination in insurance companies charging different premiums to people based on a protected attribute, in this case their gender. But I'm going to put that aside because actually the problems go so much deeper. The moment you understand just a little bit about how insurance companies calculate premiums based on risk, well, once you understand that, you quickly realise they can't calculate a premium for a non-binary person. They are literally making the numbers up, and I can prove it. But first, my name's Topher Field. This is the Topher Project, and I help busy Australians like you to cut through the crap and make sense of the nonsense that surrounds us. I am 100% viewer supported. I rely on you guys to keep the Topher Project going. So if you appreciate what I'm doing here at the Topher Project, then please buy me a coffee via the button at topherfield.com. And if you haven't already, head over and check out the new website. It looks mint, and I'm so happy with how it's come out. Check out the shop while you're there, which features all of our new merch designs, including this cool street-style Topher cross, or the bold silhouette design, this incredible new history design that turns heads everywhere, and the original and unchanged Good People Break Bad Laws. Plus, we now have caps. There's a monogram TF design, and there's also a Too Much 1984, Not Enough 1776 cap. We now have bumper sticker packs as well, plus of course my 2 best-selling books and my multi-award-winning DVD, Battleground Melbourne. You can grab all of those at topherfield.com. And in the process, you're going to be helping me to keep the Topher Project going so that I can keep cutting through the crap and bringing you stories like this one. All right, let's get into it, because this is a hell of a rabbit hole. And like I said at the outset, even Victoria Police members have been tempted by the incentives attached to identifying as non-binary. But let's dive deeper into this story uncovered by 2GB first, because in all of the reporting, there's a very important detail that appears to have been kind of glossed over, and this really puts the lie to the whole scheme. Insurance companies use actuaries, think of them as practical maths whizzes, to calculate the insurance premium for a given category or person. Basically, they calculate the risk of them having to make a payout and the average size of that payout. Then they set the premiums for the product so that the insurance company will still make a product from that insurance product. It's one of the few remaining areas where outright discrimination is still allowed. They can change the price based on otherwise protected attributes like age or gender. And they can do that because it's all based on data. They're not discriminating based on their opinions or how they feel about you. They're discriminating, but based on what the data says your risk is likely to be. Young men are far more likely to crash than older women, and their insurance premiums reflect that fact. Where you live, how you store your car, your personal history of claims and crashes, all of that is fed into the calculation of your premium. All of that is done by the actuaries. And the key is, it's data-driven. And you cannot make data-driven decisions if you don't have any data. Which brings me to this paragraph from the same news.com.au article. The Australian Road Deaths Database, a dataset that includes thousands of road fatalities in Australia, lists the gender of a victim as male or female, or in exceptionally rare circumstances, unknown. Only 32 out of almost 58,000 road fatalities are classified as unknown, some dating back to 1992. In other words, actuaries are trying to calculate the premium and the risk of a crash for a non-binary demographic that has practically no data. And it makes sense that the fatalities would be listed along binary lines because, well, I don't know if you know this, but if we were in a massive crash and all that was left of us was just a puddle of bits in the middle of the road, a DNA test would still show whether we were male or female. And just hear me out here, because it's pretty clear that not everyone realizes this. The results of that DNA test are going to be the same even if I've cut my dick off. I mean, sure, there are 32 road fatalities that are recorded as gender unknown, but in every one of those cases, a simple DNA test would have revealed the gender, no problem. Well, except in the rare but genuine cases of DSD, such as Turner syndrome or Klinefelter syndrome or these other real but exceptionally rare circumstances. The simple fact is there is no non-binary category in the road fatalities, because when you're dealing with a dead body, it's either male or female. But without data for this non-binary category, how do the actuaries calculate the risk? The risk of insuring these non-binary people? There's a total lack of crash history. Does that mean they don't crash? Well, the answer, of course, is they can't calculate that. They literally have to guess, using whatever logic makes the most sense to them. Now, speaking of logic, if I were an actuary and I knew that men were a higher risk than women, and then I was asked by my boss to calculate the risk for someone who is none of the above, but somewhere in between, they're both of them, but also none of them, like ask me later in the day and I've probably changed my mind. If that's the risk category that I was trying to calculate, my assumptions would lead me to probably find a spot somewhere in between the two extremes set by the known quantities, somewhere in between the male and the female. But that's not what's happened here. Somehow, being neither male nor female, but also both, but neither, but always changing, doesn't lead you to having a crash risk somewhere in between the male and the female categories. No. Somehow you have a crash risk that is less than either male or female. To me, that sure looks like some very charitable assumptions have been made in the absence of the data. It's almost like the actuaries and the insurance companies have been doing virtue signaling instead of doing math. And given that the premiums now therefore make no sense, they're too cheap because they're not based on any real-world data, is it really all that surprising that people would try to take advantage of the incentive to be classified as non-binary? That's just a little bit more nonsense to add on top of the obvious nonsense that's already there. As I said at the beginning, people respond to incentives. That's why products go on sale. That's why employers pay their employees, because they wouldn't show up to work without the incentive. That's why governments threaten to punish us if we do things they don't like. These are all different forms of incentives, and people respond to incentives. So of course, if people can save hundreds of dollars on their insurance, they'll tick the damn box. And even police officers aren't above that temptation. Cast your mind back just a few years when some of the civilian members of the Victoria Police were investigated because the number of members suddenly identifying as non-binary spiked, quadrupling in 1 year. And all of the approximately 100 new suddenly non-binary members were, as a result of their newfound non-binary status, able to claim an extra approximately $1,100 in uniform allowances every year. That was available to female members, but not to males. Now again, putting aside the obvious sexism of gender-based pay allowances, there was an incentive and some people took it. And do you blame them? There was an investigation to see if there was any wrongdoing, but you'll be shocked to learn that no consequences have been experienced by anyone. Although, then Police Commissioner Shane Patton, he condemned the behaviour. So there's that. Oh, and now members have to sign a statement saying that they really truly are non-binary in order to get that extra $1,000+ a year. Yeah. They're literally getting $1,000 just for signing a piece of paper. No one pays me that much for my signature. Now, I'm not going to recommend that you start ticking the non-binary box just for the discounts, although I will say this. I would absolutely love for an insurance company to take someone to court on the basis that they lied about being non-binary. Can you imagine that court case? What a circus that would become. I would need my own personal popcorn maker for that court case. At this point, I think the best thing that we can all do is point out the hypocrisy. The fact that it makes no sense, and that it is obvious state-supported gender discrimination, and then laugh. Just point and laugh. The people who are participating in this nonsense were so open-minded that their brains fell out. And it's high time that the rest of us had a good belly laugh at their expense. So, I tip my hat to Ben Fordham and the team at 2GB, not only for taking that call and broadcasting it, but for then following through on it, showing us all how insane this nonsense really is. Although I will say that they and the news.com.au reporting stopped short of joining all the dots, pointing out that at the bottom of this fraud, there was no maths to base the actuarial premiums on. Which is why I did this video, to fill in that particular gap, because I think that's an important detail. So now that you understand what's going on behind the numbers, behind the math, behind these differences in the premiums, pass this video on and let's all have a laugh. My name's Topher Field, this is the Topher Project, and I help busy people like you to cut through the crap and to make sense of the nonsense that surrounds us. I am 100% viewer supported, so if you appreciate what I do, then please help me to stay caffeinated by buying me a coffee via the button that you'll find at topherfield.com. While you're there, check out my books, DVDs, and merch via the shop tab at topherfield.com. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. The algorithm loves you and so do I. Please like, comment, subscribe, and as always, think free.